of celebrating, Cam Rising done for the year at Utah. Your thoughts? Because I know this has been a thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are, number one, the questions that the fan bases are asking, about this. Like, I think we need to go back a little bit, though. Like, yesterday was just the culmination.
Wind back the clocks.
Yeah, let's wind the clocks back all the way to the Ohio State Utah Rose Bowl game. That's where yesterday was born, because Cam Rising blew up his knee in that game and left that game. And we've been talking about injuries ever since. And yes, last year was magical, beating the hell out of USC multiple times and edging out those games and watching, all the Utah fans hate on Caleb Williams crying on the field. We all remember all that stuff. We all remember it. But yesterday, I have to say, I think Kyle Whittingham is somebody who's in a really interesting time in his career, because the guy can coach his ass off. The guy can turn 2 stars into 5 stars like nobody in the game. The problem is that the quarterback has plagued Kyle Whittingham's career. He has never had a guy that is just an absolute bona fide go-getter at quarterback. And Cam Rising was the closest thing Utah has ever had to that. And now we get to sit here and talk about, well, this season's over for Utah. And I do think at some point we need to talk about like what a losing season versus a winning season is for a college football playoff caliber football team, because a lot of people are talking about that 2 losses means with the expanded format, your season's not over. So I do think there's a conversation there, but I left yesterday with this Utah Cam Rising thing feeling like, yeah, dude, the Utah we all knew and loved, the Cinderella story, the, hey, man, these guys are going to go and fight the big boys in the playoff. That's all over with now. And it's not an Isaac Wilson problem. The kid's young. He's going to grow and develop. He'll be solid. But I just feel kind of disappointed, kind of sad, kind of like, yeah, it's over. It's over. And we'll just have to see what Utah does the rest of the year. And I've been dying on the hill of, if Utah doesn't win this conference in the Big 12, the Big 12's in serious trouble. And I understand Iowa State's got a great defense and they're a great team, and respect to those guys. But when we're being honest about it, if Iowa State's the best you got coming out of your conference, that's not a great look.
I'm not in agreement with you on that. I think that Iowa State's a great program. I think Matt Campbell's doing amazing stuff. I wish their offense was a little more potent. I wish that they, I wish they were more dynamic offensively.
Yeah.
If Utah does not win this conference, I think it is what it is. Like, your biggest issue is you don't have a traditional powerful program in this conference. You don't have that. And you're looking at a renaissance at BYU. I still think K-State's a horribly flawed program.
But right now, one of your most valued programs.
And I think Iowa State, as I have said for a while, I think I would pick Iowa State versus Utah in the championship game.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to get a long look at that. But as far as Cam Rising goes, it sucks. I don't know how, if you're Cam Rising, you get out of bed today.
Yeah.
Because the sadness must just be profound.
Yeah, and as far as this 8th season of eligibility, I mean, if you're Cam Rising, I'm not sure that that's the best decision for you. I mean,
not the best decision for Cam Rising?
Yeah.
Not the best decision for Utah. You have one of the top quarterback recruits in the country in Isaac Wilson ready to take over your program. And this is where college sports gets hazy and people start crying and getting misty. And Cam Rising, the human being, matters in this framework, matters far less than what's best for the football program. He's not been able to stay healthy as a football player. He is going to be fine as a human being. What's best for the Utah football program in the next 3 years? that Cam Rising, you know what's best? That Cam Rising's played his final snap at Utah. Period. Full stop. Isaac Wilson's the future of Utah football. He has been since the moment he signed. And now it's time to bring that future forward. And it's the same conversation we had about Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. If you are Utah football, how can you justify having Cam Rising redshirt and coming back next year?
Yeah, you're not wrong, man. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't think that the conversation is. It's obvious what's best for Utah football. Isaac Wilson, but you're still going to be mediocre at quarterback with him. He's going to take probably a season, the rest of this year, probably half of next year, to really turn into someone who can. Yeah, you like him. I get it, but
I just disagree with you. I think his development has been rapid. He's a rookie quarterback who's going to make mistakes. A year ago, he was in high school.
Yeah.
He's a rookie that's going to make mistakes. You see the brilliance, though. You see the toughness. You see the running ability. You see, more importantly, you see the diagnosing a defense, getting the ball to the right guy in the right space at the right time.
I just think that you're in a place where you're just ready to be like, yep, we're done with Cam, we're on Isaac. And I think that is fine from a tactical standpoint for Utah. They don't have a choice, really. That's what they have to do. But I think not talking about the story of Cam Rising and like the fact that, why did they leave him in the game? Well, they left him in the game because they felt like at that time they're saying he was their best option. That's a load of junk. You left him in the game because you damn well knew if he left that game, he was going to be done at Utah.
It was over.
Yeah. And so I just think that this story of Cam Rising for Utah and Kyle Whittingham's career is much more than just another quarterback who couldn't stay healthy and you're moving on to the next guy. This is the best quarterback the program's ever had. And I
think I agree with that.
And Cam Rising is somebody who was on the precipice of taking you somewhere you hadn't been in a really, really long time. And for Utah, now you're going to have to rebuild that with Isaac Wilson. And I agree. For the record, I agree. In Isaac Wilson's tool bag, theoretically, he should be a better quarterback than Cam Rising ever would have been. He's more athletic, in my opinion.
Better
He's got
thrower,
a bigger arm.
Better
certainly. Thrower. I think his instincts as a quarterback, he embraces taking those shots down the field. He likes finding the window. And not to say that Cam didn't, but I just think that you, with Isaac, you see this level of explosiveness that I think you hadn't seen with Cam. So I don't think Utah's in a terrible spot. I just think when we look at the Big 12, I understand Matt Campbell and Iowa State are doing great things, but they haven't been to the Rose Bowl. They haven't been to the big game. They haven't gone deep in the playoff, right? So to me, as a conference, you need Avery Johnson now. You need K-State. You need somebody somewhere to do something other than be way mediocre and underachieve Oklahoma State. At what point does somebody in the Big 12 step forward and take control of the conference? That's what I want to see.
Well, and I think the other part of this Cam Rising story that's so critical is it allows Utah offensively to get back to the full playbook. There was a lot that Cam Rising could not do. They could not run, by some estimates, 50 to 60% of their under center, scheme was gone because Cam Rising's hand injury. I mean, that's a large swath of your under center playbook that you just couldn't run. And I think the other story that's being reported that I think is really critical is two leaders emerged yesterday. When the news was given to the team, which was before it came out, the team held a players-only meeting, almost like, hey, let's talk about this so we can move on. Brant Keithy took the leadership reins yesterday. And the other guy that stood up and spoke in front of the team, and it was supposedly this really nice moment, Isaac Wilson. And what did Brant Keithy say after that meeting? Well, he's no longer a freshman. He's our starting quarterback now. And he's right. It's October. You're not a freshman anymore, right? You're not just some scrub off the bench that we haven't seen. This is a kid that's been dynamic. And so for me, I think this is exactly what's right. And what else did Brant Keithy say, the tight end at Utah? It's good for us to be able to focus on one guy and build a game plan week in and week out, knowing that's our starting quarterback.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that.
And the full playbook is available now. They don't have to cut out, a ton of plays because Cam Rising's got a hand injury.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting. And I'll continue to tell you, and I know that many people don't want to hear this, their biggest problem is not their quarterback.
Yeah. We got to talk about that defense.
Their biggest problem is that you have got to find a way to get your defense healthy. Karene Reed is such a huge loss at linebacker for them.
Yeah, I just think that the defense, I understand that Arizona State is a raggedy ass team, a team that's tough, that wants to, impose their will physically because they know they're not more talented than you. And so they did that, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But what surprises me from the defensive side of the ball is Utah's typically been that team that you're not going to be tougher than. You're not going to roll up to any field and push Utah around or beat them in the hole. And you beat them in the hole and push them around, and that was really surprising.
And I think the other guy that a lot of people don't talk about is Sione Fatu, who I think you've got to have Sione Fatu on the football field. He's young. He's a guy that's a sophomore. He went to Bingham, which is a huge football factory here.
Yeah.
If you put those two linebackers back on the field, Karene Reed and Sione Fatu, you beat Arizona State. Whether you want to live in that realm or not, I totally understand you can't.
And I don't think people understand, like, 6 foot, 225, you're a beast playing that position. You are stronger than
you're
people.
A monster.
You are able to, Scatabo is a hell of a back, and I give the kid a lot of credit. I agree with what you said yesterday about him. I thought he looked like he was about 80% at the start of the game. He certainly wasn't that at the end of the game. And I think that, I don't know. This is kind of what I mean. Like, Utah is just in this place as a program where they're not excelling at anything, and they're just going through it. And
I think Cam Rising's been a cloud hanging over the program.
Yeah. And so hopefully to your point, maybe it can be a thing that pushes them forward. Maybe, we'll find out, right? We'll find out what it is. But I just hope that people remember Cam, for the injuries, but also in a positive way for how much fight he put in, because he could have easily quit after the knee.
Yeah, and this Utah program's got to get back to being an elite defensive team. They've got to get back to being that top 5 defensive unit in the country, and right now they're not. And their biggest issue is that Arizona State pushed them around.
Yeah.
And you don't see Kyle Whittingham-led defenses get pushed around very often. And I think it's because you're missing 2 of your brightest stars. Now, if you get them back this week, Whit talked about it yesterday that you can get them back. I think that's a big deal, and everybody deals with injuries. Everybody deals with injuries. Kyle Whittingham yesterday said they missed 19 tackles against Arizona State. It just, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That a Utah defense would miss 19 tackles. That's wild. And their schedule is TCU at Rice-Eccles Stadium. That's a night game.
That should be a win.
Should be, right? It should be.
Yeah, but like, I understand we thought they'd beat Arizona State, but you understand we talked all about how Arizona State was a tough team that, the
Dillinghams?
The Dillinghams were going to be, you were going to have to win the physical battle there. TCU, you should beat TCU in your sleep. TCU is not a good team this year.
Well, they'll throw it on you. And Hoover can throw the ball. So we'll see. But your TCU at Houston, BYU in the Holy War on November 9th. At Colorado. I think that at Colorado game, that's a game that I don't know that you can win if this defense doesn't show up.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that really concerns you about Utah's defense is their inability to cover.
We show up.
At the Iowa State game at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and then you're at UCF. That is a one-loss schedule.
Yeah, looking at that schedule, I think, when we take into account the quarterback situation that we've just talked about, and then you kind of parlay that into the schedule, if you can just beat TCU in Houston here, build some momentum on both sides of the ball, and head into that next game, you should be okay. You should be okay.
The real problem is that Iowa State has a pretty easy schedule. You are home for UCF Saturday. Then you're in your bye week before you host Texas Tech on November 2nd in Ames. Then you go to Kansas, home for Cincinnati, and then you finish at Utah and home for K-State. I mean, Iowa State's going to have a hard time not being in the Big 12 championship game.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look at BYU, and I think BYU has a considerably more challenging road ahead. And I'm curious, do you guys view BYU as a Big 12 championship contender? Today, sure. Realistically, down the road, I do not. I think you're asking a lot of a football team. And again, I think it'll come down to Jake Retzloff, as we've talked about. If he's got to be significantly more accurate as a passer. If that happens, they can lose one game left on this schedule. I think this Friday night, we're going to get a real good look at who he is, because I think you're going to have to throw the football to beat Oak State, because Oak State's going to throw the football and it's going to be explosive. I think that's going to be a high-scoring game. At UCF, at Utah, Kansas, at Arizona State, and Houston.
Yeah,
that's 2 losses in my opinion.
Yeah, we're a little different on this. I think that Oklahoma State coming to Provo is going to look to stop the run, and you're going to have a lot of opportunity in the passing game. And I don't think that Alan Bowman or anything on that offense is something you should be scared of when you've played who you've played. Like, when you're able to do that to Arizona and slow those guys down like that, and then
but your offensive line at Oklahoma State's considerably better than Arizona. Your wide receivers, I think, are deeper. You did a good job against T-Mac. There's no doubt about that. Tataroa, McMillan, and the Fighting Fafitas obviously struggled in Provo. I think your lungs are going to bleed. We talked about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that BYU is scared of Oak State.
No.
I'm not saying that. I don't believe that that's the case. What I said was, Alan Bowman's done one thing this year, drive the ball down the field. And he's done it well. He's put up a pile of passing yards. The problem is that's all they've been able to do. They haven't been able to run the football. I think when you look at this BYU defense, I think if you are able to keep them one-dimensional, you're going to beat Oak State.
Right.
The question will be, is Jake Retzloff accurate enough to win a 42-35 kind of game? That's the question.
Do you really think that Oak State can come in at night and put up 35?
I do, because BYU, if you look at the way that Oak State, I mean, it's shocking how bad defensively Oklahoma State's been.
Yeah, it is.
I don't have any doubt that BYU is going to score points. My question is, if you're BYU, what has hurt you? And what hurt you against Baylor?
Turnovers.
What keeps teams in games?
Yeah, turnovers.
And what is Oak State's ability to throw the Alan Bowman can throw the ball, but what does he do?
Yeah, I guess
turnovers.
And obviously we're going to talk all about this game as we get later in the week. But I don't know what I struggle with Oklahoma State right now in this particular scenario of, hey, we're going to go to elevation at night and play BYU. I would agree Bowman can pass the ball.
Yes.
Like he's shown he can push it down the field. But what I think we've also seen out of Oklahoma State is this propensity to just seem lost.
Yes.
Like to just seem like, again, I've talked all about it this year. We've talked about it where it's like, hey, those first 15 offensive plays seem scripted and you're running the ball and you kind of have this plan, right? Like you're going to come out and we know what our first 15 are going to be. But then after that, it's like, oh, hey, like we're going way away from
we
the
don't
run.
have a plan.
We don't have a
We
plan.
don't have.
So it's like, do I think BYU is going to have another K-State performance against Oklahoma State? No, I don't think that we're going to see that type of chaos again. But what I do think my instinct says is that Oklahoma State's going to have a lot of trouble scoring 30 points in that game at night at Lavelle. That's what
But you understand they're averaging 300 yards a game passing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they don't pass the football well. The issue is they can't stop anybody from passing the football.
No, you're not wrong.
Oklahoma State gives up 258 yards a game passing. And what does Jake Retzloff average? Jake Retzloff averages 247 yards a game passing.
And this past week, they started running the ball. So if they're able to run the ball, which you would think that they would, I mean, Oklahoma State's going to sell out to stop the run. I can just tell you that right now. Yeah. But I mean, if you can have if you can just average like 4 yards carry, BYU theoretically should have a good night. But again, not to get you lost. I look at the schedule and I say, okay, I would expect you to beat Oklahoma State. Whether it's a shootout or not, I expect you to beat Oklahoma State at home at night. I expect you to win that game. So then from Oklahoma State, what do they have? UCF, I think, after that, if memory serves.
BYU or who?
BYU, yeah.
BYU goes Oak State at home, at UCF, at Utah. I think UCF has just been so incredibly disappointing.
Yeah.
So incredibly disappointing.
So if we give them Oklahoma State, we give them UCF, Utah, that's a 50-50 game. You can't give that to BYU, especially at Utah.
And we'll have to see how Utah's defense gets healthy. I think there's a lot.
So let's say you lose the Utah game, just for argument's sake. So now you've got win, loss. You beat Kansas.
You come home for Kansas.
Yeah. You beat Kansas.
You go to Arizona State in a game that you really should be able to win.
But the
physicality up front is not an issue for BYU. Their linebackers are fast and physical.
All right, so let's say they win that game, and then you beat Houston. Your one-loss team. Hell of a year. That'll put you in the Big 12 championship game.
But that's asking a lot. And then there's Texas Tech, and I know that I've turned heel for Texas Tech fans. I understand you don't like the fact that I'm not a Joey
You don't
fan.
even watch Tech football.
But why should I believe that they're going to beat Baylor this weekend? That's going to be really interesting. At TCU, does anybody believe that TCU won't be able to score points against Texas Tech?
No. Tech's defense can be scored on.
Like I look at some of these Big 12 statistics, and I think this matters. And this is one of the things that I just will continue to ask. Like, Tech fan, you're the perfect example. Your Texas Tech fan yesterday was so pissed that I said I don't view Texas Tech as a Big 12 championship contender. You're dead last in defense. You're not middle of the pack. You're dead last in defense. You're giving up. Do you guys understand? They've given up 24 touchdowns.
That's a lot, dude.
Do you understand that they're giving up 32.5 points a game? That's not like BYU's giving up 16 points a game. Championship quality defense. Right? You look at even middle of the table, K-State's giving up 3 scores a game, 21 points a game. And why do we question whether or not Texas Tech can compete for a championship? You're dead last in defense. And you're number 1 in offense.
Right.
You're going to score a lot, but you're going to give up a lot. And you're going to run into some defenses.
Yep.
Because you've got Baylor, TCU, Iowa State, Colorado, at Oak State, West Virginia.
That's 3 losses at least. At least.
And you can say what you want about Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
That team's a better football team. That's a really... Colorado is much improved, and they should have won this past weekend had they not lost their wide receivers, but they did, so they didn't. So